All right, and we're live. Welcome back to the Loopcast. Today, joined by my other friend Tom and Josh Mercer. The boys are bopping today. How are we doing?
Let's go.
Look how nice Josh looks on the stream. If we could get some compliments to Josh, another Josh went out to Petoskey, got him looking right. Tom looks good all the time, so that's
It's I'm just natural beauty.
nothing new,
Yeah.
nothing new there. Today we're going to be talking Arizona abortion law, my insane discovery of some virtual cashiers, and we're going to round it out with Ask Josh Mercer. So, starting with the Arizona abortion law, I think this dropped yesterday. It was a little bit of a bombshell. Everyone freaked out, including, unfortunately, Kari Lake. We're going to get into that. But I'm going to play Erica a little bit here. Basically, there was an Arizona law that predated the state, actually, of Arizona. And the Supreme Court upheld a 160-year-old pro-life law, which will effectively ban most abortions in the state. On estimates, this could save about 11,000 Arizona children every year. And the enforcement of this law will begin on April 23rd. So, unsurprisingly, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs, she's a Democrat, issued an executive order deferring the enforcement of it to the Attorney General, Chris Mays. She's not a fan. She's come out with all kinds of statements about how she's not a fan of this, of course. But I think what surprised a lot of people was Kari Lake. So Kari Lake is running for Senate in Arizona. She was seen at one point as kind of a rising star in the Republican Party, ran very much so on a pro-life platform, touted that in a lot of her speeches, used a lot of pro-life language, said she was pro-life. And then now that this comes down, she said that she opposes the Supreme Court's ruling. So essentially, Arizona was handed a win, banning abortions, saving children, accomplishing the pro-life position, and she opposed the ruling. She said she was upset. She said that she wants Arizona voters to make the decision, and so she's supporting legislation that Katie Hobbs is trying to get forward, basically bringing in some abortions back into the state. I think a lot of people shocked and betrayed. Josh, how do you feel about all this?
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I mean, the thing is, when Donald Trump had made a statement on abortion saying, let it go back to the states, and then Kari Lake decides that she's going to run with this and say, yeah, and now let's legalize it. Like, wait a minute, what is the problem? I mean, Kari Lake ran for governor, then she lost, and a lot of people were said, there's voter fraud and all that other kind of stuff. Now she's focusing on running for the Senate race there, and she supported this law, this Arizona law. She said, I want Roe v. Wade overturned, and she was all in favor of this 2 years ago, but now she's completely turned on a dime, and she wants the legislature to pass a pro-abortion law. I mean, I don't understand what's going on with her positions. She's all over the place. The thing is, when she was running for governor, there were times where she was so outstanding and would give the best articulation of the conservative idea. And then a day or two later, she would talk and you'd think she was from Mars. I mean, it was really kind of a Frankenstein situation. And now this is what we're getting. I mean, like, I think she made an absolute blunder here. And I just can't I cannot understand what her position on this. This is crazy. She's calling on the Republican legislature to pass a pro-abortion law and have the pro-abortion Democrats sign it into law. I don't understand.
Yeah, I'm always amazed when people cite the age of a law as the reason, like an obvious reason of why it should be repealed. There's a reason that certain laws stand the test of time, and there's a reason the Arizona court supported this one. But I think the message we're getting, and one thing that both Dobbs and now Trump's statement is giving us, we're separating the wheat from the chaff. Those who are actually pro-life against those who wanted it just to win elections. And I think Kari Lake, unfortunately, falls in that, in the want to win elections. And the message is, we need to win elections. Once we win elections, we need to actually use that power, except not at the federal level, because then that interferes with winning elections. Also not at the state level, because that interferes with winning elections. So pro-lifers, please vote, but then just shut up. That's the message that we're getting.
Yeah. What does one do, I guess, would be the question I think a lot of people are feeling when a politician shows to have no backbone, betrays the people that she ran on, the people that potentially are about to get them in office. What's the answer to a good response here?
Well, first of all, the primary in Arizona has not arrived yet, and so there is an opportunity for a pro-life Republican to jump in and use this issue against Kari Lake and defeat her so that she's not the nominee. Now it's late in the game, so that probably might not happen. She may still end up being the Republican nominee for the Senate seat in Arizona. And if that's the case, I'll be honest, I'd tell Catholics in Arizona to vote for president, but leave their Senate ballot blank, because she doesn't deserve your vote if this is the kind of garbage she's putting out.
As somebody who works with the federal legislature a lot, in the Senate and the House, I'd much rather, and I might be in the minority in this, but I'd much rather work with a pro-life minority than have to wonder, is that Republican going to vote for life, or is it going to vote for abortion constantly?
Well,
I want them to make my job easier, not harder.
I mean, it's one thing to say Trump, like he's having to make a prudential call saying, look, trying to get a 15-week ban, 16-week ban, a heartbeat ban passed on a federal level with 60 votes in the Senate is going to be very, very hard. So why waste my time and energy focusing on that? Abortion policies on the states, on the federal level, here's what we can do, appoint judges and that kind of stuff. That's a prudential call. But what Kari Lake is doing is like running away from this ruling in Arizona, which affirmed life. She's saying, let's get the legislature to pass a pro-abortion law. Like, that's not being prudential at all. That's like abdicating your position completely because you're scared that the voters, like, why wouldn't you be happy? Like, I mean, the thing is, if this happened on the opposite side, you know, like in Michigan, I live in Michigan, and we had a pro-life law that was on the books for a long time. But what happened is Gretchen Whitmer and the pro-abortion Democrats in Michigan went to the court, and they got the court to throw it out, and they're all like celebrating because they wanted abortion. And it's like, well, doesn't our side want babies? Don't we want the law to protect unborn children? I mean, I still think Donald Trump believes that, but Kari Lake, I don't think she believes that at all.
Could you imagine, too, if a Democrat did this? Like, if a Democrat flipped on their party and said, oh, I'm actually supporting some abortion ban. Maybe we'll say no abortions in the third trimester, and I'd support a law. And they're saying, yeah, that's the obvious whatever. Their head would be on a pike right now. That's I guess, my problem with all of this.
Well, you saw what happened in Nebraska, where the state lawmaker was a Democrat, and he was a Catholic, he was pro-life. And the Democrats in that state made it absolutely inhospitable to be pro-life. Now, Nebraska tends to be just a more pro-life state anyway. And so he says, I can't handle this anymore. I'm leaving the Democratic Party. And he became a Republican. And so now we're seeing that kind of leadership in some of these states like, Nebraska. I think other states are strengthening their pro-life laws. I know that Arizona is what they call a classic purple state, a swing state, where both parties are desperately trying to win it, both for the Senate and also for the presidential. It's a big, important swing state. But I just, what Kari Lake her thought is, well, we can win by completely giving up on the issue. It's like, well, as Tom said, like, the point of you getting elected is to be able to do something so we can win on policy. Like, why give away the net? And what's the point of voting you in if you're going to lose right now anyway? I don't understand.
And Arizona, I think, is while it might be a purple state, I do think it's a pro-life state. Kathy Herod, the woman who runs the Family Policy Council out there, one of the best family policy council heads out there. I can remember a few years ago, at the beginning of one congressional session, they passed close to like 10 pro-life bills. And I asked her, what is she going to do next on the pro-life issue? And she's like, there's nothing left. All they need to do is sit back and wait for the courts. This was pre-Dobbs, of course. And pro-life laws still get support out there. It just sometimes it doesn't always seep up, I guess, to Senate candidates.
Well, do you think then the Republicans in the Arizona legislature are going to stand solid? Because Kari Lake, I don't know what the heck she's doing. It feels like she's going rogue here. But what do you think is going to happen to the legislature?
I think the Family Policy Council out there did put out a really good statement supporting the law.
Arizona Freedom Caucus did too.
Yeah, Arizona Freedom Caucus as well. And they're kind of new to the scene, and a whole other story that we should focus on someday is just the Freedom Caucuses in the states and the great work they're doing. But I think she is worried. I mean, when you work, you know how it is. When you work in politics, you never say positive until the day after the election. And
You're always
nowadays,
nervous. Yeah.
yeah, and nowadays you can't even say the day after the election because you haven't counted all the dead people voted yet. But,
Yeah, and shout out Adamo. He's a frequent commentator saying part of the problem is that on our side with all of this, when they compromise the truth of the pro-life position, they reveal a lack of belief, and it makes it less believable than others. And I've seen people like Lindsey Graham get hit on this too, and I think this applies to Kari Lake. It's like we're kind of seeing people have different definitions of pro-life. So if you believe life begins at conception, and that taking the life of a baby at any point in abortion is a murder, a taking of an innocent life, if you say, well, I'll compromise to 15 weeks, you're saying you're okay with some murder. So your position becomes rhetorically less effective. So I'd rather have someone keep their integrity. And when you're handed a win like this in Arizona, where you're not going to be murdering innocent children, now you take the next step of the pro-life position, which is how do we support mothers in dangerous situations? How do we support unplanned pregnancies? Like, what's the next evolution of the pro-life movement? I think what was revealed is that Kari Lake is not actually pro-life, because when she was handed essentially the victory, her next answer was, what a huge win for women. Now we're going to be able to do all these extra things to take care of women, to take care of children, to encourage families, to build the
Things
culture
she
of
didn't
life.
say for 500.
Exactly, which is just revealed she's not actually pro-life, right? If she actually was pro-life, those would have been the first words out of her mouth, not, I'm going to support a policy to kill children, essentially.
Right.
Or like, on a rhetorical level, that's the problem with all these
So
kind of in-between
her heart was
Republicans.
never really in it, obviously. That's
Obviously.
the point. But that doesn't mean, see, like what happens when something like this happens, when Kari Lake shows the world what apparently she really believes, and she doesn't care about the pro-life message at all. It was all just a smokescreen. Look, there's a lot of cynicism in politics, and so people just say, see, that's how every Republican is. And it's like, well, no, that's not the case. That's how this Republican thinks. And there are probably other Republicans we don't yet know about who privately think the same way. But there are a lot of pro-life Republicans who really stand up for and have stood in the gap for a long time, that care deeply about trying to protect women and children from abortion. And, you know, I think, again, we talked about this on the last Loopcast. I think we need a whole of government approach. We need to provide resources for women so that they don't feel like they're left out on their own. And that's what the abortion industry wants. They want women to feel like they're on their own, that their only choice is to abort their baby. And we need to let them know, we're here for you. We got your back, and we're going to give you options here that will allow you to affirm life, and it will make everything better.
Yeah, and to your point there, and Tom sees this all the time in D.C., the way that I think about politicians when they betray your interests. So politicians have to go around and build coalitions. Those coalitions are made up of people of different beliefs. There's for sure the pro-life coalition. I think there's people that look at politics and see abortion as the gravest evil going on right now in the political landscape. That's their number one issue. So if a politician betrays that part of the coalition, the key now is for you to be serious enough to go punish them for betraying you. I'm not naive enough to see politicians as they believe everything that they say or all the things that they use to get elected. Okay, so now when someone betrays you like this, you're done. I need to send a warning shot to not double cross pro-lifers or Catholics or people of good faith that are getting you there. You're not going to have a political future anymore. That's the key. And I think pro-lifers have done a good job of like building grassroots institutions to get the word out on that. I've seen a lot of good reporters. Mary Margaret Allahan's been great on this, showing old clips of Kari Lake using people. The warning shot needs to be sent. You can't do this. Like, this is not just going to be tolerated by people that elect.
I think there's two major problems that this whole episode shows. Number one, on the left, the pro-abortion politicians believe it. They really believe it. They are fighting for what they believe in. They have a vision of what is good, and in their mind, abortion is a good thing because it helps women, you know, with their careers and all that kind of stuff. But our side doesn't believe in it. And so it's all transactional. It's all just, okay, what do I got to do to get this number of votes? It doesn't feel like they're on our side. And too many Republican politicians say, hey, you need to compromise. You need to give us, you know, an inch here or there. I understand that, but it always feels like it's a one-sided. So when something like this happens, why aren't the politicians coming out and saying to Kari Lake, what are you doing? You're killing us here. You can't do that. You can't just completely betray our base. We all need the base The base needs to work together. The voters and the politicians. It has to be a two-way street. It can't just be, you got to come out and vote for our guys, and then we'll treat you like dirt and completely abandon you when something bad, quote unquote, happens. When in fact it's not bad, it's good.
To something Tom said is, I don't think as a pro-life movement we are good at holding politicians accountable.
Right.
I don't think we're great at taking those scalps. I work with a lot of our allies, and there's a lot of like hand wringing and I'd say hair pulling, but
Yes, there is. That's why we're both bald.
exactly. However, what we need to realize also is that if on the pro-life cause, if we're looking to politicians for all the answers, we can't be upset when the solution is political. As far as I'm concerned, somebody who's out praying in front of a clinic is doing more for the pro-life, in front of an abortion facility, is doing a lot more for the pro-life movement than some senator in the United States Senate.
Wow.
And who I'm going to listen to, because right now there's a feeling among some in the pro-life movement that woe is me. This is now defining the pro-life movement for the next 3 or 4 decades. And it's like, no, it's not, because the pro-life movement is not defined by one politician, even somebody who has
And we're
done
building
so much
and
like
we're
Donald
growing.
Trump. Right.
And that's actually kind of what I'm getting at. Like, we need to have the entire pro-life movement grow. Like, I thought 40 Days for Life was one of the best innovations of the last few years, because I've always said this, it gets hard to try to keep praying outside an abortion facility day after day after day. And their idea to have a concentrated campaign of 40 days is, I think, beautiful. And then you could kind of rest, and then plan your next campaign. Certain innovations like that, we've seen so many pregnancy resource centers flourish across the country. The question is, why is it that we don't why aren't these states backing it up? And these pro-life states are passing these pro-life laws, back it up, open up the wallets, and make sure that women have these resources so that we're not taking on the entire abortion industry by ourselves. Like, look, there's a lot of Catholics out there who pray and they witness and they donate their time, energy, and if we didn't have that, it would look so much worse in America today. No question about it. However, if we want to take it to the next step, we need to make sure that these local state governments are providing resources for women so they don't feel like they're on their own. It shouldn't have to be just the pro-life movement alone. All these faithful moms and dads and grandmas who are praying the rosary alone. We need these politicians to step up and say, it's time to provide funding and resources for these women so that they can affirm life. That's what we got to do. We got to do it.
We should ask any future candidates we endorse, can you name all the pregnancy care centers within your district?
Right.
Absolutely.
And if they can't, they shouldn't get our endorsement.
Gone. Yeah. And to me, Kari Lake, done. I'm not afraid to take scalps here.
Yeah.
She's never going to get any support from me at all.
Don't vote
Done.
for her if you live in Arizona.
Spread the word. Done. I have no tolerance for that.
Dunzo.
So moving on to a listener question here, and this question's for Josh. So we have someone studying for their master's here. We have a very educated and handsome group that listens to this podcast. So the question comes in.
It's the hosts that are handsome too, though. Don't forget that.
Thank you, Josh. Question for Josh, the resident poli-sci guy. I have apparently ruffled the feathers of my professor in a philosophy of education course I am taking online for my master's. I stated in a discussion board that the United States is a democratic republic. We vote on individuals to represent us and have a combination of democracy, in quotes, Greece, and a republic, in quotes, Rome. This is what I was taught in school because we do have a mix of both systems. He went off on me and stated that people who say we have a democratic republic are being politically motivated and need to read John Adams. So his question is, do you have any literature for him to review in order to feel a rebuttal? And so he's looking for an answer here. Is that the proper understanding of our system of government?
I mean, I would have said that, if people ask me, are we a democracy, are we a republic, whatever, and, the word democracy, people just think of as the people get to vote. The people get to vote and they get to set their laws. That's true in a sense, but for example, in Greece, ancient Greece, that's what they did. But the citizens would vote on everything. And so they would vote, this Socrates guy, what is his deal, man? Like, he seems like a threat. And so they told Socrates, okay, you gotta check out,
You got to leave town.
either leave town or you kill yourself. And he's like, I'm not leaving, so I'll just kill myself. I'd rather die than have to leave the place I love. And so it was a pure democracy in Greece where everyone voted on everything in Athens, right? That's a true democracy in a sense. And a republic in Rome was that you would elect people to represent you, and the people that would represent you would vote on things, but even they would be bound by certain laws and certain provisions and rules and regulations. They couldn't just do whatever they wanted to. So democracy, a pure democracy, is where 51% can do whatever they want, and the other 49% are kind of screwed. So I would say in our country, we're a constitutional republic. We have a constitution, we have the Bill of Rights, we also have the Declaration of Independence. We have these, this backbone, this prime law that a given temporary majority cannot overrule. So the House and the Senate couldn't vote today to get rid of free speech, or they could, but it would be overturned because they don't have that authority. They don't have that authority. They don't have that ability, and they would be stopped, and that would be rightly so. And so the idea, like even the Senate itself is, like people get all confused by this because you say, if we understood democracy, pure democracy as the majority always wins, then the far left says the Senate isn't democratic. Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, it's not intended to be like every person is equal. The idea is it represents all the different states, and it's not trying to represent everyone perfectly at 51%. And the filibuster, they say, well, that goes against the majority rule. Yes, actually, that's the point. We have these mechanisms in our constitutional republic so that a temporary majority cannot rule over everything and get rid of every rights that we have. The whole system is intended to allow, the people to elect their leaders and for those leaders to pass laws. And so ultimate authority does come from the people, but that the people don't have unlimited power.
Do you know why he said to read John Adams?
Yeah, I mean, well, John Adams, I mean, like John, I don't know why is that what his teacher said? That's what I was sort of surprised.
Yeah, it said the teacher said that people that were taught that we have a democratic republic are being politically motivated and need to read John Adams.
Well, so we see these debates online every once in a while because when there's a certain segment, I mean, online Twitter, it gets fun. Anytime someone who's a politician or a pundit or a reporter refers to the United States as a democracy, there are people who will just jump in right away and say, we're not a democracy, we're a republic, we're a republic. And then, I mean, that's true. But it just, they tend to kind of come off as they're cranky, but they do have a point. Like
they're cranky.
A temporary majority of 51% cannot get whatever they want. And the left is like, wait a minute, we want to be able to do whatever we want if we have control, all the controls and levers of power. And that's why the Democrats are super upset that we have a filibuster, which allows, 41 senators to try to put the brakes on a lot of bad legislation. And they say it's anti-democratic. But it's the idea behind the filibuster, and even the Senate itself, is to try to make it so that a temporary majority can't pass whatever it wants to.
Okay. Before that, even the Electoral College, I think, is a good example as well. And the left want to get rid of that.
Yeah, people hate the Electoral College too.
Right. You get rid of the Electoral College, then states like Iowa or Michigan, or maybe not Michigan, that's a pretty big state, but some of the smaller states, it might be, why do you even exist? Because they would lose most of the power when it comes to deciding their leaders.
Yeah. Okay. Send that back to the professor. Thanks for writing in. Appreciate it. So I have a kind of did you see this moment? This one really, in light of a lot of the minimum wage laws being changed and fast food and all that. So here's a picture of a digital cashier. This is a work from home cashier this picture was taken in New York City it was like a fresh type restaurant. And the cashier is zooming in from the Philippines and being paid $3.75 an hour. So she is she's running the like customer system. So similar to a normal cashier would be kind of typing in, what the order is, sending it back to the people so they can make it and it'll be brought out. So I looked into it a little bit. It's a new mechanism to avoid wage laws, essentially. It's going on in Canada and the United States, specifically in New York City. It's this place called San Chicken is this location, but it's basically, instead of having to pass on the higher cost of those laws to customers in terms of food, this is a way to pay people less money outside of the country to lower the bottom line. So the argument is that it's more than the minimum wage in the Philippines, so people in the Philippines are making more money. However, we are literally, removing a human element of ordering food. I just
So
could not get
bizarre.
over how dystopian this was.
I'm surprised they didn't, put it together and use like a machine. Why would they do that rather than,
Well, okay, so
a kiosk?
I saw that. The argument is that the kiosks don't have the same human touch. So someone said they went to New York and had one of these virtual cashiers. And they said the cashier was warmer and nicer than a normal cashier from New York City would be. So they're saying that so it's cheaper and nicer than a New Yorker.
Well, those New Yorkers, right, McCluskey, right?
I don't know if he popped out for a second. We'll see if he can get back in. But the argument is that it has more of a human touch than just a straight kiosk, and they're more helpful and nicer. But I don't know, guys. I feel like this kind of makes me feel like Tucker Carlson right now, where he's like, the question, do we get rid of all the trucking jobs because of self-driving trucks? And he's like, absolutely not. That there's reasons why we have people drive these trucks, and it's good for Americans to be employed.
Well, here's the thing when it comes to politicians in the minimum wage. Politicians love to solve, well, I shouldn't say they don't love to solve problems. They love to pretend that they solve problems. So a politician loves to be able to say, let's raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour, and I'm gonna get it done. And then they pass the law, and then they don't care about the consequences afterwards. So then businesses like this will they either do kiosks like a lot of McDonald's do, or they do this. I cannot even believe this, a remote Zoom to cashier. I'm surprised they do that instead of a kiosk, but maybe it's cheaper than a kiosk. I don't know.
No, they're saying the argument is that they get better service and there's more human touch. And funny enough, there's an option to tip the virtual cashier after they help you out. So send that tip out to the Philippines or wherever.
Well, tipping nowadays is totally ridiculous, I think. And I'm usually a big tipper, having been a bartender. However, I've never fully understood minimum wage laws, because if $20 is a good idea, why isn't $100?
Right.
If $20 makes it livable, then $100, then everybody can own a yacht.
I think even if this does make food cheaper, or it's employing someone in the Philippines, I don't know if I want to live in a world where I go to a corner restaurant and I don't see any humans. I remember a time where there was localized cafes ran by humans, employing local teens in the community, and the person that's running the cafe is your neighbor. And I feel like this is just a natural evolution of large corporate chain restaurants trying to be the most efficient and innovative to beat other people to more profits. And of course, there's a spiritual element missing to all of this, in that those are supposed to be community institutions connecting us. And now there's literally a virtual cashier, like there's no real person.
Okay. It sounds like to me you're saying that the restaurant itself, who's hiring these employers, is the villain. I'm not saying that they're not, but I still think that the main villain here would be politicians that would place the minimum wage at a level it's just too high for the market to bear. And so these politicians just think, oh, well, we can raise it to $20 an hour or whatever it is, and the businesses they'll just deal with it. And the problem is, actually, they can't just deal with it sometimes, because the price of food at restaurants in New York City are already very high. And if you just crank it up another 20, 25, 30%, they're going to lose their customers. People are like, I just can't afford this. And so then the restaurant goes out of business. And so, I mean, I sort of feel for this company. Like, that's why, when you pass these $20 minimum wages in some of these cities, that, companies like McDonald's are like, well, then we'll just put a kiosk in. And in this case, I guess this restaurant is going with Zoom workers from Nicaragua.
I somewhat disagree because I think my argument is that big corporate conglomerates that are passing out retail chains that they have no connection to, they would make this innovation regardless. I don't think this is a minimum wage thing. I think they're trying to beat other people to profits.
Why is it okay? But why is you're saying McDonald's is going to do this anyway? But like McDonald's in my town isn't doing that, so why wouldn't they?
I don't. You think they won't?
Maybe.
Hey, Josh, have you walked into a McDonald's? They all have these kiosks now. They've replaced people. And the food they're making are poisonous to us. And maybe I just have a problem with the large corporate influence in local food. Like I don't think. Look at the stuff they put in food. Look at how they've shrank all of it. Sure, you can make arguments that it has to do with minimum wage laws, but I don't think so. Maybe we shouldn't have fast food.
I think minimum wage laws that are being cranked up too high are definitely an accelerant on this. The question is it going to be that every restaurant does this? I don't know if that's the case. Maybe we'll see.
I don't think it should be legal.
I think with the you're sounding like a crunchy conservative, Tom, but I'm agreeing with you. And the answer, of course, is buy local, because I agree with you. I think McDonald's, if they were given the choice, they would. And the problem is, so the governments, then the state and local governments and federal governments respond to the big corporations, and who gets hurt the most? The little guys.
Right.
That's absolutely true.
Who then are stuck with all the different regulations that these big corporations are adjusting and can afford. They can afford paying $20 an hour, but the Del Rey Cafe right up the street from me cannot.
Yep.
And they're the ones that'll go out of business. McDonald's won't.
Yeah. So and they're also global now. It's like I think I'm just missing more of a. There was a function to locally owned everything. I mean, you can even go to as big as you want. Social media, tech, all the biggest industries right now, they're all humongous global, no allegiance to local areas. They cut jobs when they have to. We talked about McKinsey hollowing out once great American companies. Like, I believe that companies should be localized to an area that they're committed to improving, committed and staffed by people from that area. Like, I don't just think of America as a giant cash cow for big corporations to take advantage of as they do other places. And in this case with restaurants, that's how I see it. Like, restaurants should be owned locally, taking food from local. Like, there's even examples of restaurants, they use Cisco or whatever to get all their food, and they're getting fruits and vegetables shipped from other parts of the country, even though they have those same vegetables locally, but it makes more sense for the bottom line for them to get it from a couple states over or something like that. I even take issue with that. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. All the process of shipping those over, all the preservatives that have to be used. Like, sure, for a couple extra cents on the dollar. So my position on all of this is like, jobs are meant to be staffed by people in the community. Food should come from that community if possible. And like, if that means that, we pay a few extra bucks for the food that we consume, we pay a few extra bucks. Like, that's the sacrifice I'm going to make.
I understand, but other people might not be able to make that, might not make that sacrifice. I understand the idea of trying to persuade them. My biggest concern, again, with pushing minimum wage laws higher than they are, is that you're accelerating this trend, and then basically you're providing McDonald's and some of these corporations with great test examples, and they're able to see how it works in New York City, and then they're going to expand it all perhaps to the rest of the country. So that these minimum wage laws that these politicians think they're doing everyone a favor with by passing, they're going to end up hurting everybody. But I agree with what you said, McCluskey, at the onset. They really hurt the people they allegedly support, because now, I mean, is it better to be working and getting $14, $15, $16 an hour, or be unemployed and offer, oh, now it's $20, but you don't have no job. Like, thanks a lot, guys.
And if you're unemployed nowadays, you can't even rob the nearest restaurant because you'd be robbing a kiosk. So
You can't rob people from the Philippines. Sure, I'm sure they probably don't handle cash, I'd imagine. They probably can only do card or whatever.
for shoes.
Yeah, that all makes me sad. Okay, so next up we have, very interesting article is an NPR expose. It was written by a 25-year NPR veteran, Uri Berliner. He's an editor there. Definitely not conservative by any stretch of the imagination. I think he references that his mom was like a lesbian feminist or something like that. He's basically sounding the alarm that NPR, as I'm saying it, has lost the plot. So NPR stands for National Public Radio. The idea is that it would represent the views of people in the country and that they would go and do journalism for everyone, ask questions, properly understood journalism. And it's kind of become something else. So the one stat that really was alarming that they started the article with is that in 2011, 26% of listeners described themselves as conservative, 23% as middle of the road, 37% as liberal. In 2023, only 11% described themselves as very or somewhat conservative, 21% as middle of the road, and 67% of listeners said that they are very or somewhat liberal. Now, might not be a shocker to many people who have listened to NPR recently. I think a lot of people actually have stories of, oh, I used to listen to NPR, what happened type of thing. And this guy really gets into the weeds as to really exactly what happened. And as we'll probably talk about, it all centers around, what everyone says. It's Donald Trump. Donald Trump is what really accelerated this push to the left. And for NPR to take things, instead of being curious, they took narratives from the top and said, we're going to cover this story in this way, in a way that's not going to be flattering to Trump, that's not going to benefit his campaign. 4 examples they brought up. The Russia hoax, the Hunter laptop story, the lab leak theory, and then what really was the backbreaker was George Floyd, because it completely changed a lot of internal operating systems as to how they cover news. They became an anti-racist news organization. Race and identity just became paramount to how they cover news, who they hire, what stories they're talking about, even the language they use to talk about stories. I mean, he was talking about the different advocacy groups that formed after George Floyd and I mean, I'm going to give you a few examples, but we have MGIPOC, Marginalized Genders and Intersex People of Color Mentorship Program, Mi Gente, Latinx employees at NPR, NPR NOR, Black employees at NPR, Southwest Asians and North Africans at NPR, UMA for Muslim identifying employees, women, gender expansive, and transgender people in technology throughout public media. They have Kevre, Jewish Heritage and Culture at NPR, and NPR Pride. I did notice there were no white advocacy organizations. That seemed like the only one really missing.
Are any Christian-based ones? That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are. We just didn't see it. That's probably what it is.
Highly doubt. And then we have
That's when the one guy goes out to lunch.
And so the real, the power quote here is, concerned by the lack of viewpoint diversity, I looked at voter registration for our newsroom. In D.C., where NPR is headquartered and many of us live, I found 87 registered Democrats working in editorial positions and 0 Republicans. None.
That's the public right there.
I don't think it's been that different. I think the other stuff probably more the problem, because I used to go on NPR a lot, more when I was with Family Research Council, and I think it's important that we do, because as Josh was mentioning earlier about we want to expand the pro-life base, we want to expand all the base, so we need to be talking to these people and going where they are, and some of our people listen to it. One time I was on the show with Diane Rehm, who was a host on NPR, and I was debating a Jesuit priest on the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. He was for it, and this is legislation that would have basically eliminated Christian protections and forced you to hire transgendered and others that might be against your belief, even if you're a church. And he was in town but refused to come in studio. So I was in studio with Diane Rehm. By the end of the debate, she was more on my side, and she told me afterwards, that was just so rude. He was 20 yards away or 20 miles away, and he couldn't come in studio.
Jesuits.
But they used to be a better format. or better.
That's kind of
be
interesting
more
that you're
open.
saying it was a debate about, whether we should have protection for Christians. They bring you in to come up with the Christian view, and then to the opposite side of the debate, they bring in a Jesuit.
I was the person at the evangelical organization telling the Jesuit what the Catholic perspective was on this. So it was all very,
I love it.
very, and he kept on asking me like what my background was and everything like that, and I'm like, I'm a cradle Catholic. I know nothing. But I do think NPR does its, and other institutions are doing itself a disservice by this dividing itself as the way they have. And all those groups you listed, just as a side note, they also have equivalents like a HHS and federal agencies as well. And that's why HHS does not give out grants really to Christian foster agencies or Christian adoption agencies, because now they just give it out to LGBT agencies.
Wait, I'm sorry. So, can you repeat that?
The organizations you were talking about, NPR, like the divisive ones, like
Yeah.
Muslim NPRs and gay and lesbian redheaded NPR workers and things like that. You have the equivalent in federal government as well. And what we've seen from that is that now government grants that go out, because these are people who are deciding where the government money goes, and it's going to bad places, and it's not going to the Christians. It's not going to the foster families who believe that marriage is between a man and a woman.
Now, I want to go back just for the NPR thing for a second. I thought what you said was good, McCluskey, but just I think to set the table, I think what happened with media in the United States, mainstream media, I think it was a seminal moment when Jon Stewart was invited to come on to CNN, and he berated CNN. Like, you need to cover the news. I'm just entertainment. I'm just having fun. I'm just comedy. But you're the ones supposed to be the truth tellers. In other words, he was telling them that the media should not just say, this is what this side says and this is what that side says, and try to represent the views faithfully of what each side is calling for, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's both sidesism. You need to refute everything Republicans are saying. That's what Jon Stewart wanted. He went on to the media and started shaming them. And you're just interested in entertainment. You want people to watch your TV shows. I'm a humor guy. Of course I do entertainment. But you're supposed to be news journalists. You're supposed to have higher ideals. And he shamed them so hard, and they kind of felt bad about it. And so I think that was the first step. And then Donald Trump comes along, and unlike other Republicans, Donald Trump's like, I want to win and I want you to lose. As opposed to John McCain and Mitt Romney, who thought their job was to be like the Washington basketball team that loses to the Globetrotters every time, right?
The Generals.
That Washington Generals, yeah. So Donald Trump's like, no, actually, I think you're terrible. I think you deserve to lose, and I want to defeat you, and let's get going. You guys are terrible. And he would call him out. And the media's like, all of a sudden, wait a minute. Jon Stewart was right. We need to be the counterpoint. We need to refute everything he's saying. And I'm like, okay, if the media wants to refute what politicians are saying, and fine, but why are you only doing it on one side?
Yeah.
They don't, the other side gets away with all sorts of lies 6 days till Sunday, and you never say anything. And so it's just funny to watch it. Like, I listening to NPR, it'd say stuff like, well, Donald Trump claims this, which is not true.
Well, it was insane. In the article, he linked, so all of his claims, he actually linked to real NPR stories that they've written, and everything he was saying was true. Like, if you go back to the Russia hoax, they were talking about, I think they interviewed Adam Schiff 25 times about Trump and Russia. And then many of these conversations, Schiff alluded to purported evidence of collusion. And then he said that NPR confidently said that there actually was collusion. And then when the Mueller report came out, no credible evidence was given. NPR's coverage was notably sparse. And then they just quietly had that fade from programming.
Yeah,
There was no
they just
apologies.
ignored it.
Right, and that's kind of part of the problem is there was no... It's like
accountability.
So they were wrong on
accountability.
Russia. They were wrong on Hunter laptop. They were wrong in the lab leak. Super wrong in the lab leak. And there was a great line in here. When the word first broke of a mysterious virus in Wuhan, a number of leading virologists immediately suspected it could have leaked from a lab where they were conducting experiments on bat coronaviruses. This
in the city of Wuhan.
In the city of Wuhan, like
what an idea.
Imagine that. Like the first, that
The
probably
possibilities are endless.
Exactly.
In defense of the lamestream media, if it wasn't for their bias, there would be no Loop. There would be no Loop Hands. There'd be no Daily Signal. That's why. I mean, how much the listeners and readers of the Loop have increased, like, I mean, 500 or 600 fold between
because of
the last few years because of this.
It's left a huge opportunity, no question. And
So
I think
we are their filter, or Josh is their filter for stories that they need to read and cut through all this bias.
so. Here's the thing too. So NPR, according to all statistics, is dying. I mean, their viewership's down. They were even saying in all of their efforts to try to reach different demographics, if you look at the percentages, it's well below what the actual percentage of minority is. For example, I think they said they wanted to reach Hispanic Americans, which occupy, I think, 7% of the country, probably going up. And they're, I think, or maybe 12%, and they're only hitting 7% according to their listenership. And so by all accounts, dying. CNN is dying as well. And I guess I offer this to you guys. I don't know if there's any way for them to fully recover their reputation, because I think partially because no accountability and the refusal to apologize for being wrong, but it's just become so obvious they've staked their camp in, we have the narrative that's been handed down, the one that we're going to push. And so we're going to write in this way. I don't think, even if they tried to now, even if someone came in and gutted CNN or gutted NPR, I don't think the brand would be able to recover. I don't think there'd be enough trust.
I agree with you, but like, you know, NPR, both the people who work there and then their audience, I mean, we're talking more white than Wonder Bread.
It is white coastal elite for sure.
I mean, like, it's like, you know, what could be more white than NPR? It's like maybe if you go to Portland, Oregon and order some coffee from Starbucks, that would be even more white than. But did you see that? I just sent you this, Tom. Did you see a few years ago, Huffington Post was talking about how they believe in diversity? And they tweeted this picture, I swear to you, like about how they favor diverse voices. But like, can we get the picture on the screen?
So funny.
All white women, the entire editorial board.
Yeah.
Like, what's the diversity here? Like, I went to Wellesley. Oh, really? I went to at Harvard. Oh, wow. Such a difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just give me a break. It drives me crazy.
Yeah. And there's definitely, and so, yeah, of course, we have, they think they're so much smarter than everyone. Yeah. I mean, it takes listening to one episode.
So bring in a Pentecostal Christian who lives in, West Virginia. Bring in a black guy that loves sports from, New Orleans. Make that more diverse. Get different ideas and opinions in there, but they would never do that.
No, because they're not, the great irony, they're not actually committed to diversity. Definitely not diversity of thought, viewpoint, but for sure not committed to diversity of any type. I mean, they're all just trying to protect their jobs. Really.
How many Karens are in that photo?
I mean,
just think about what happened to Senator Cotton a few years ago when he wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post.
Oh, that was the
woman
Times,
who,
right?
Or the Times, yeah. The woman who allowed the op-ed was eventually fired.
Right, that's right.
Just for, I mean,
it wasn't
diversity much differently than we do.
Yeah, right.
I mean, of course, the whole point of an op-ed is you're inviting somebody else to come in and write something that's opposite of the editorial line of the newspaper. That's why it's an op-ed, people. That's the very nature of the name of the word. And
that's
so
actually, I shouldn't even open my mouth, but I never knew what op-ed stood for until right this second. So thank you for that.
And so Senator Cotton's like, allow me to introduce your readers to an opposite opinion. And the readers of the New York Times are like, no, we don't want to be introduced to another opinion. How dare we be accosted by other views? I want my New York Times to have Wordle and lots of Russia hoax.
It wasn't the readers; it was the journalists, so-called journalists that were upset.
You're right. Oh my gosh!
Maybe they are the only readers left.
It reminds me of the Ronna McDaniel thing at MSNBC. Like MSNBC legitimately had a meltdown thinking about the possibility of a Republican possibly coming on the show.
Could you imagine having an employee who worked for a political party, some flack, just spitting out their views and ideas? How dare we? What do you think about that, George Stephanopoulos?
Well, I'm going to send them my resume, and then when they hire me, I'll send them all the stuff that I've done, all my actual resume, so they can fire me and pay out my contract.
That'd be great.
Because I mean, for what, half hour of work, she's getting about $300,000.
I know, good for her. Hey, and it's Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd used to work for, what was it, Tom Harkin, right? The senator from Iowa, I'm pretty sure. I mean, so a lot of these guys had old jobs where they worked for someone else. George Stephanopoulos, of course, being the most obvious one. He worked for Bill Clinton. I mean, he moves right on, and now he's Good Morning America or whatever else he's landed. I mean, give me a break.
All right. We move on to the Twilight Zone now. Josh Mercer, you're up first.
Well, my dad is a proud member, now retired, of the United States Navy, and he loved serving our country in uniform. He spent time in Vietnam, patching up Marines. I just thought I'd share this with everyone here. The Navy released this fact sheet just the other week here, showing every major shipbuilding program that they're working on and how it's being delayed by years of delays. And I'm thinking to myself, gosh, getting kind of a late stage Republic vibe going on here. You see this stuff like, oh yeah, the future District of Columbia, lead ship, that's approximately 12 to 16 months behind schedule.
Yikes.
The Virginia Block 4, 36 months behind schedule. Another one, the Constellation lead ship, behind schedule 36 months. And you think to yourself, I mean, I don't know. Would we need ships? Maybe. Is there another country that's rivaling the United States that's, I don't know, separated from us with an ocean? Maybe China?
Did you see that we're now paying more money on the national debt interest than we are spending on military? I don't know what that means, but it can't be good.
It doesn't sound like good news, right? And then we ran a story in the Loop within just the last week talking about how so many people in the military, because the military, just like it is with the police departments and the fire departments, people in the military, it tends to be a family business, right? So I have my grandfather was in the military. My father was in the military. My brother and sister were both in the military. I did not decide to serve, but it is a family thing. A lot of people in the family are doing it. But so many people who served in the military, or even in the military now, are actively discouraging their friends and family from entering the service because there's so much of this DEI garbage. And when politics meets the military, and they don't want to be a part of it. It's becoming a bunch of crap. And so why would you want to serve under Lloyd Austin and Joe Biden if they're pushing all this DEI stuff in the military? And I understand it. I told my 3 sons, I do not want you joining the military. I just don't trust them right now.
That's what daughters are for nowadays.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that sneaking might be one of the biggest things that Donald Trump could, that people aren't thinking about, but could be important to bring to the table. If he guts all the crap in the military and runs a campaign of making people proud to serve our country again and making it actually an honor thing again, that's all that people want. All people want to do in the military is to be treated with respect, to serve their country, to feel a sense of pride and honor. That is just not the reality right now. As you're saying, Josh, I have all the same experiences. I had friends now kind of getting to the point where they've served their first term or their second term or whatever, and they're getting out and they're saying, don't go anywhere near the military. Don't go anywhere near the military. And if we get back to a place where it's actually a meritocracy, it's men going away to serve their country and defend the homeland, I think we could that could be the most important thing as we're facing foreign aggression, to have an actual fighting force that people are scared of again.
And you're worried too because are you going to get involved in this quagmire between Ukraine and Russia, number one? And number two, are we ever going to get to a spot where we turn on our own people? I know that sounds kind of crazy, Civil War talk or whatever, but we have a Department of Justice that's going after pro-lifers like Mark Hawk, going to want to put him in jail for 11 years. It's wait a minute now. I get the feeling that some of these people on the left think of us as criminals. And
or the states that want to protect their borders.
Right.
Texas.
You don't think a second term Joe Biden wouldn't send in American troops if the Texas National Guard continue to defend that border?
I'm telling you, man, that's why a lot of people they're like, I don't think I want to take a step forward into the military with people like Biden in charge.
Scares me quite a bit. All right,
It
Tom,
does.
you are up.
Mine, I'm hoping it's seen as more positive. One thing after Dobbs, what I'd love to see some of the newspapers like the Washington Post and all, or even before Dobbs, when Texas passed its heartbeat law there, all the newspapers were reporting, oh my goodness, 3,000 women couldn't get abortions. And the way they would report it was like how sad a thing it was. And, I'd go on Twitter and say, oh, I fixed your headline for you. 3,000 babies born because of the Texas law. Except the Daily Signal recently just posted a story taking that attitude and talking about how the Supreme Court's abortion ruling has shifted singles' attitudes towards sex and dating. That they no longer think, because in the past they had, and this is why abortion helps predatory men, because they always had that backstop. Oh, we could just have sex regardless of consequences, because if all those bad things that we already use, like contraception or whatever, fail, we can just kill the product. They don't want to call it a baby, though they could just kill the baby. So we need to talk more about the positives of these positives that, I mean, in 21 years or in 18 years, those 3,000 or so babies that are being saved, even more nationwide because of the Dobbs ruling, are going to be of voting age. They're going to be looking for future careers. We need to remind them they're survivors. And
I agree with you on the survivors thing, but I think also what you're saying here is so brilliant. Like, there are other consequences to a pro-life culture. Like, what if people are having second doubts about engaging in reckless sex? That's good that they're not doing reckless sex anymore. I mean, like, the whole idea, they call it casual, but it really is reckless. Like, you're just randomly having sex with a bunch of different people. Like, bad things are going to happen. And why do we think this is good for women? Why do we think this is empowering for women to have men treat them like a disposable tissue? This is terrible. So I do think we need to talk about, like, yeah, actually, wow, now that this is serious and we can't just kill it, we have to, I don't know, be a little bit more responsible. I think that's better.
And you'll find the quality of partner you will find will, I think, be much, much better. And I don't know, maybe there's a term for a lifelong commitment that two people a man and a woman can make together. I don't know, let's call it marriage. Marriage, that's a nice word for it.
What an idea. What a concept.
Just came up.
What an idea. Okay, so my Twilight Zone, shout out to Chicago, in a little place somewhat known as Crook County, aka Cook County. So you can't, some just write themselves. I didn't even really have to do too much here. Lori Lightfoot has been hired to investigate, quote, worst mayor in America, Tiffany Haynard, at $400 per hour. Now, I think the implication is she has a lot of experience with corruption, so maybe she'd be able to see it in other people. She's a very unpopular governor in Chicago, did not last very long, and was accused of all kinds of things as well. But Tiffany Haynard is a special case. So I watched a video on her. She built an ice skating rink. She paid a contractor with taxpayer money to build an ice skating rink that she keeps closed except for when she's using it. Okay, so that's only the tip of the iceberg of what she's done. She has the police department in her back pocket because she pays them outrageous overtime to be her personal security off the clock. So we're talking about them clocking like 80 hours and making government paid overtime on that. She also took a taxpayer-funded trip to Las Vegas in which she stayed in a very lavish hotel and had like $500 meals with her friends. She's like the Michael Jordan of misusing taxpayer funds.
You said Crook County?
Crook County, yes.
Or Cook County?
They're the same. So She also misspent COVID-19 relief funds, hired contractors without seeking proper bids, overpaying vendors without approval from the board, and accepted large campaign contributions from vendors chosen by the mayor. She also has a side business that she pays, and then she also changed a rule that if someone replaced her, they would make like 90% less than what she makes on her salary right now. I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying she's probably the Michael Jordan of corrupt mayors, and she's the mayor of a small town in Illinois. And hilarious to me that someone was like, all right, we're going to get her. Let's go get Lori Lightfoot to go investigate her. Oh my gosh, the mayor of Chicago. It's just like, it's really hard to wrap your mind around.
You
how
can't make
corrupt
this
is.
up.
No, you can't make this up. And so I wish her the best. I hope Lori goes and gets hers. My favorite comment on this, though, if you scroll down a little bit, that's like hiring Charles Manson to investigate Osama bin Laden.
Or hiring O.J. Simpson to find the real killers.
Oh, the memes are so good at this. This is like having Bill Clinton investigate Harvey Weinstein. Yeah, man, it's just some things write themselves. But hey, thank you.
You have to laugh because otherwise
You laugh or you
go
cry.
crazy.
I don't know what to say. So shout out to anyone from Illinois listening. My in-laws are hanging out there in Crook County. Well, they're actually
Our
not Crook
prayers
County,
are with
Illinois.
you.
Prayers are with you. So that is all for this episode of the Loopcast. We appreciate you guys joining. If you want to help the program out, reviews, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, subscribe, like the video. If you want to email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. We'd love to answer some more of your questions. If you want to support the show, loopcast@catholicvote.org. You can become a champion. That's the only way we're able to produce this bad boy. So thank you in advance for all the people that are champions, and consider joining if you're not. And we are praying for you guys. Hope you pray for us. St. Thomas More, Our Lady of Guadalupe, St. Fidelis, pray for us. And we will see you guys in the next one. Peace.